Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we're going to be tackling a topic that actually I was inspired by Brian from Without Parole to talk about the other day. So I was on his show, Gamescast Live, and we came across the subject of a PSVR2 refresh, a little bit like we had for the PSVR1 a couple years after launch. They came out with a model that kind of sorted a lot of the issues people had. It changed where the controls for volume and mute was. And I also think it changed the location of the headphone jack and a couple of other things. I know this because I had a PSVR1, which then broke because of the cable being quite thin and quite easily wound up in the wrong directions. And then I bought a V2 and it's been there ever since. It still works to this day and I absolutely love it. But with the PSVR2, there's a couple things that I would change for a refresh headset, and today we're going to be going over that, along with a couple other considerations which maybe I wouldn't change for sure, but could be interesting to discuss. Before we get into this, only 25% of you are subscribed, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members, who are all on screen right now. With that being said, let's start off with why. Because do we even need a refresh for the PSVR2? And in my opinion, yes, for just a couple of issues. And what would this refresh even look like? Well, to me, a refresh or update of the headset could go one of two ways. It could either sit alongside the headset as a lighter model, which we covered in a previous video, or it could be a replacement for the current one. And to be honest, I'm going to tackle the replacement direction for this video because, again, we've already talked about PSVR2 Lite. I want to talk about an upgrade in every sense of the word. Just common sense things, essentially. As for when this could arrive, if it ever did, I would still give it another maybe year or two. We're a couple years out from the PS6, even now, and the PSVR2 did not launch until, say, 2 years into the PS5 life cycle. So we are quite a ways away from another VR headset for PlayStation, at least going off the track record that we have. With that being established, what would I actually want to change? Well, number one, the headset could be a little bit lighter. It's still not the heaviest headset around, and it helps that the PSVR2 is well balanced, but some material changes could lighten it up, maybe make it a little bit thinner as well, but you'd have to really take into account the fan and the cooling for that and the inbuilt cameras, because looking at the current headset lineup of today, the only thing that really stands out as suboptimal for me for the PSVR2 is its size. That front housing unit for the panel and the cameras and the sensors is quite bulky compared to, say, a Quest 3. So I'd love to see that kind of brought down in a refresh. What I'd also consider really needed for something like this would be replaceable cables. Now, before the headset came out, there was, I think, a pattern and a couple of leaks saying that the headset cable would be removable on the PSVR2, and technically, it is. Technically, if you had all the tools, I think you could be able to take the front of the headset apart and take the cable out and replace it. But what I really mean by this is an easy plug-and-play replacement. The main reason that people will be returning their headsets if they're broken is because of a broken cable. It's the easiest failure point on the entire headset. You know, if you've got it plugged into your PS5 throughout the day and, you know, you're either really tired and you don't notice the cable and you trip over it, or if you have kids, they're running around and they trip over the cable and it snags out of the console and snaps. That's the most common failure point because the cable's just there, it's out. And it's also not very sturdy, so I'd love to see an actual replaceable cable like we could have got in the leaks, because it just never came to fruition with the base PSVR2, and for me, I think that's a very big missed opportunity and one of my biggest pain points about the headset in this current day. As for lenses and panels, honestly, for this point in time, I'd say just stick with Fresnel and OLED. If Sony wants to go with the rich, deep color marketing strategy, OLED and Fresnel is still the way forward if they want to keep the price point that they're at. There are other options like the oval lenses of the Pimax and the panel in that, which uses local dimming, which still does look good in the darker areas, just not as good as OLED. But if they are keeping for OLED for those colors and the deep contrast, I would hope they do some work on persistence to kind of clean up the image in some brighter games. But aside from that, I'm pretty happy with how the PSVR2 looks, to be honest. It's got a great panel in it, and you know, if they could get pancake lenses and micro OLED in, that would be awesome, but I think at this price point it's just not going to happen. Now, we talked about replaceable cables, but what about a wireless headset? Well, for me, I'm not sure if I would really want this. The weight needed to add a battery to this thing would go against me wanting the headset to be lighter from earlier, but if they manage to strike a bit of a balance there, not make it too heavy, you could have the option to have plugged in, wired or wireless if you want to roam free in your VR experience. For me though, this isn't really high up on my list. I'm fine with a wired headset for longer play sessions. It means you don't have to worry about a battery level, apart from your Sense controllers, which we'll get into in a second. But say for games like Gran Turismo, it's one of the great ones so I can sit down on a sim rig and just race for hours and not have to worry about anything really running out. So for me, wireless isn't a really big priority, but if it was done well, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd also love them to bring back volume controls and the mute button onto the actual headset. For the PSVR 1, there was no pass-through button, but you did have a couple of buttons on the front for turning your volume up and down and muting yourself really quickly, and I have no idea why they opted to not have this on PSVR 2. Now, you can change your pass-through button to do a couple of these actions, but for me, I use the pass-through button for pass-through because that's what it's meant for and it's quite useful. But I'd love to have some small buttons on the headset that allow me to adjust volume and that mute button, because it was really useful on PSVR 1, and honestly it's one of the other things that going from PSVR 1 to 2, I was really disappointed to see that it's not there. So that's a bit of an oversight, I think, on Sony's part. I'd love to see that rectified with a refresh model. With a refresh as well, I think that'd be the perfect time to bring in Sense controllers being sold separately. As I said we were going to touch on before, here we are. Again, you still can't buy them. We're getting into June, I think, which is where the Apple showcase is. I believe they've already announced it sometime in June, and apparently this is where we should see Sense controllers being announced for Apple Vision Pro, and we should be able to buy them separately. No idea on a price point. They could be $100 for a set. That would be a little bit rough, but to be honest, they are quite expensive tech. Let's be real. So it's possible we see a price point like that, but we should see them announced for Vision Pro and being able to be bought at Apple stores, and I think maybe from Sony as well, sometime in June. So keep an eye out for when that Apple showcase is, and we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, overall, that's my wish list for a PSVR 2 refresh. In my opinion, don't know if this would really happen this soon as well, but maybe in a couple years we'll see something like this come along. Maybe they'll come out with some new lens tech or something. I'd be first in line to buy that if they did. Let me know what your wish list is for a PSVR 2 V2, and I hope to see you all in the next one.